Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports, and it's Mock Draft Monday once again. Last time we did a lottery simulation, the Dallas Mavericks moved all the way up to the top spot once again, of course sparking some controversy down in the comment section. So in today's mock draft, I wanted to do another lottery simulation, and hopefully this time the Dallas Mavericks don't move up to the very top spot. Make sure to leave a like on today's video if you do enjoy. Subscribe to the channel for more content as well. Hype the video, it helps out a lot in the algorithm. And then also just leave some nice comment down below, whether it's how long you've been watching here at Utility Sports or your thoughts on some of the draft prospects, who your favorite team is. Whatever you feel like commenting today, I would greatly appreciate that. I read every single comment. And without further ado, let's jump into that lottery simulation now. Drum roll, please. And first overall, the Indiana Pacers, with the Washington Wizards moving up to number 2. The Sacramento Kings pick now at number 3. And lo and behold, once again, the Chicago Bulls own pick number 4 in one of these lottery simulations. They are a very desperate franchise that could really use an opportunity like this. So big stuff there. Brooklyn falls down a few spots all the way down to number 5. That Pelicans pick moves down a spot as well. So the Hawks will own the 8th overall pick in this lottery simulation. You see the rest of the top 14 there. Let's jump over now into the actual mock draft itself. A quick thank you as well to College Basketball Analytics. If you use promo code UTILITY at cbbanalytics.com, you can get $30 off of any of their packages. Definitely great data. You'll see some of their data in today's video as well. I highly recommend them. And let's jump into that first overall pick now with the Indiana Pacers on the clock. And not only are mock drafts a great way to talk about potential options, but we're also looking at what we expect to happen. And there's been a lot of rumors and reporting around the Pacers and their significant interest in Duke forward Cam Boozer. Now, I know a lot of the comments will say, hey, AJ Dybantsa should be the first overall pick. They're going to definitely push that. But Indiana, I thought a lot about this selection for them, and there's a lot of different ways that we could go here because it's a great draft. The top 4 in this draft are very, very talented. There's a real argument for any of them at the very top, depending on how you're viewing these players. But first overall, I do have the Indiana Pacers here selecting forward Cam Boozer out of Duke. And my rationale here, not only is there a little bit of smoke in this discussion when it comes to Indiana's interest in Cam Boozer if they were to land a top 2 or 3 pick in this year's draft, but also I think the fit is brilliant. For a team that fittingly wants to play with so much pace, Cam Boozer is the best outlet passer in this draft. For a team that really values some analytic perspectives, Cam Boozer is the best prospect analytically in this draft. When you look at the style of play that Rick Carlisle has installed there in Indiana around Tyrese Halliburton, Cam Boozer checks a lot of those boxes. Then you start to think about this team positionally. They have Pascal Siakam, they have Ivica Zubac, so you might be thinking, okay, their front court's pretty filled out, but what's preventing Indiana from playing a little bit bigger? They already have so much pace and speed. Pascal Siakam, of course, is extremely quick off the dribble, has an elite spin move. His ability to break down defenders, I don't think is just limited to being position locked as a power forward. Could Indiana look to play a little bit bigger and open up some lineup versatility by slotting Boozer in next to Siakam and Zubac in their starting lineup if they were to acquire the first overall pick? I do think that's a real possibility. Now, you can definitely make arguments for someone like AJ Dybantsa, who would be very awesome in Indiana in his own ways. Part of the reason I faded away from Dybantsa here is his assisted percentage on 2-pointers is extremely low, and on 3-pointers. He's a big-time self-creator right now, and while I think he could be awesome in the NBA, I do think he would find a ton of success in Indiana. It doesn't necessarily fit their style of play as much as Cam Boozer, and we saw it with Bennedict Mathurin. There was some moments where the marriage between Indiana and Mathurin just weren't that good. Now, obviously, Dybantsa is a better player than Bennedict Mathurin, will be a better NBA professional than Mathurin, and I think his fit in Indiana would be more sensible as well. But Boozer checks a lot of the boxes. I think his positional size alongside Zubac would be very good for them defensively. And then it gives Indiana the option of, hey, we can play a whole bunch of guards together. We could go McConnell, Nembhard, Obviously, Haliburton, when he's back, you could throw Siakam and Zubac in there. Otherwise, you can mix Nesmith in. Basically, they would have 4 or 5 different really good lineup constructions because they'd have a surplus of front court talent while already having that surplus of backcourt talent as well. So it's a very opportunistic moment here for the Pacers, who I thought did very well in that Zubac trade at the deadline. And if they do keep the top 4 pick in this year's draft, they're going to be so well positioned going forward. Boozer's extremely smart. He's an elite passer. And I do think a lot of the areas that critics were speaking on Haliburton pre-draft, a lot of that same narrative is following Cam Boozer right now. And I think it's unfair. And I think Cam Boozer, alongside Tyrese Haliburton, would be elite team basketball there in the state of basketball itself, Indiana. Looking at some of his data as well, we talked about the analytics perspective, and he's just a complete do-it-all, everything kind of player. Ranks in the 97th percentile in defensive rebound rate, ranks in the 94th percentile in offensive rebound rate. He's extremely productive in pretty much every single area, a very gaudy 25% plus assist percentage. And I do think if you go back to some of his high school tape, which, again, I'm not basing everything off of high school tape, but right now the biggest missing component of his game is mid-range shot volume and scoring volume. But if you go back to who he was in high school before he was super analytic pilled by John Shire's offensive style, I think there's a real world where Cam Boozer can create for himself off the bounce, get to the mid-range area. Some of his big matchups in high school, including one against Cooper Flagg a couple of years ago, Boozer was creating for himself a ton off the bounce, got to the middle of the floor a ton, pulled up for some 2-pointers, and I think that's going to alleviate some of the concerns that people have about him right now, because his game maybe isn't the most aesthetically pleasing to people in terms of what the highlight reel looks like, but the functionality of it's insane, and I think Indiana would be a real threat, not only in the East, but in the actual league, to be a real finals contender as soon as year 1 of Cam Boozer's career. Moving on to pick number 2, the Washington Wizards here now. And Cam Boozer's been a fun player for me to talk about for Washington, but with him now off the board first overall to Indiana, the Wizards are in a really great spot to add elite talent still. And it's kind of an interesting fit for them because they, of course, acquired Trae Young already, and they traded for Anthony Davis. So this is a team that's kind of ready to step on the accelerator a little bit. However, getting a top pick here in this draft, or a top 2, top 3 pick, is going to obviously carry a lot of weight for their long-term future, and that's who they're going to shift the franchise toward, even with Trae Young and Anthony Davis in the building. So I think in a case here with Washington, the value of fit is a little less essential than it is with Indiana, who clearly has the face of their franchise already. So second overall, I do have the Washington Wizards here taking forward AJ Dybantsa out of BYU, and this kid is incredible. I know right now a lot of the analytics pilled people on Twitter are extremely low on Dybantsa, including multiple of them having him outside the top 5 in their prospects this year, which I think is ridiculously crazy. While I understand some of the concerns, right, you're looking at maybe a lower 3-point attempt rate, the stock numbers aren't there. There are some hesitancies I have about, okay, at his very best, how impactful is he? But you can't question this guy's on-ball skills mixed with his athleticism and the functionality of those two things together. He's one of the best drivers of the basketball we've seen in the last 10-15 drafts. He's absurdly effective as a self-creator, and he's got a really wide variety of gathers and moves inside the arc that he's able to get to, where he's got nice little right to left rip throughs. He's got the Euro step down pad. He's absurdly athletic, can leave his feet and finish above the rim in traffic, both as a cutter and as a driver himself. And he does a really nice job winning the leverage game with his contact balance, dropping those shoulders low, getting that chest pointed down to the ground, but keeping his eyes up, and his ability to bend at the hips and knees do such a nice job for him in winning that leverage battle despite being very tall. If you want to know why we don't typically see 6'9", 6'10" type of players as elite drivers consistently, is because they tend to come with more of an upright base, and it's hard for them to get low and beat guys off the bounce. But Dybantsa's got that special combination of bend, on-ball skills, and finishing talent to kind of make everything wrap together. And that shows up in his overall numbers, where this year he shot very well on twos with absurd rim volume. One of the highest rim volume numbers in this entire class, including centers, which is just ridiculous. partially a credit to Kevin Young and the offensive system that BYU has, but also just mainly a credit to Dybantsa, right? Yegor Dioman last year was not putting up any kind of rim volume, even in the stratosphere of AJ Dybantsa, and a big part of it is him creating for himself. Almost 85% of his 2-point makes this year were non-assisted, so self-created opportunities, and 30% of his 3-pointers this year were non-created for him as well. So you're looking at a guy who's scoring off the bounce a lot. Now, the fit with Trae Young and Anthony Davis might be a little clunky, and I think they're going to have to stylistically figure that out, especially the Trae and AJ fit is a little weird. But I do think just the talent reigns out here, and for Washington, looking for the long-term future of their team, you don't base a decision here at number 2 on Anthony Davis or Trae Young really at this point, especially given the ability that Washington could potentially have to even get out of those contracts long-term where they didn't really give up too much to get them to begin with. And if they do have the luck here in the lottery to land a player like Dybantsa or Boozer or Peterson, that will become the face of the franchise moving forward. Pick number 3 onto the Sacramento Kings here now. Sacramento continues to be a team that I just really think needs the lottery luck this year. They have struggled so mightily for so long, and I think back to the year they did make the playoffs and almost beat the Golden State Warriors in round 1 with Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox playing like an all-star, Domantas Sabonis having an all-NBA caliber season, and the Kings just can't get out of their own way. Part of that's ownership, but it's also just GM decision-making at the time as well. Like the drafts, they have not done a perfect job by any means. Their free agency signings have not panned out for a long time. And their style of play under Doug Christie just doesn't fit their actual skills that they have on their roster right now. 3rd overall, I am going with Darryn Peterson for them out of Kansas. Now, I did think long and hard here about Caleb Wilson for them 3rd overall. And I do think Caleb Wilson would be a tremendous front court pairing alongside someone like Domantas Sabonis. I think the two of them would be a really unique pairing. However, I don't 100% know the future longevity that Sabonis is going to have there in Sacramento. We will see what happens, obviously, but with DP for Sacramento, first of all, there's the hype around him, right? Came in as the number 1 projected player in the draft at the very start of the year. His high school numbers and film and everything was just unbelievable. Every step of the way, when it's been a big game, he has stepped up to the occasion. You think about all of his showings both in high school and in college against AJ Dybantsa. He's outplayed AJ in those matchups pretty significantly, in my opinion. So that's all stuff that's a big plus on his resume. But at the same time, there are some questions, right? The rim volume was extremely low this year. And that's really what I want to point out to you guys. Only 56 shots at the rim. Now, I do think that is a testament to some of the deficiencies that Kansas had in their roster building with Bryson Tiller and Flory Badunga both in the front court. Things were a little clunky for how Kansas was going to be able to generate that rim volume for a guy like Darryn Peterson, especially with Bill Self's utilization of him offensively, mostly flying off of off-ball screens. And while Kansas fans are going to defend Bill Self to their deathbed, I do think that there is still a lot that Bill Self did not utilize Darryn Peterson for when it comes to advantage creation. I think he was mostly looking at Darryn Peterson as a play finisher for him this year, and I really think that was just a misconstruction of what their offense should have looked like. And for Sacramento, the nice thing is I think you can kind of mix the two things together where Darryn Peterson probably will be Sacramento's lead guard sooner than later, but you also, if you do keep Domantas Sabonis, have that kind of archetype to fall back into for stretches where you can create this dynamic offense of Peterson's on the ball a lot, but he can also function off the ball for you a lot, and kind of find that mix of, hey, it's really tough to keep this guy contained because you can vary to different play styles. It could be, hey, dribble handoff with Sabonis, we're going to manufacture a paint touch for him here. Or, hey, we could do a little bit of a DHO screen rescreen, and you're looking at a pull-up 3 opportunity. Or you just put Peterson on the ball and Sabonis comes up, sets a ball screen. Or you put Sabonis down in the dunker, or you could have Sabonis set in flare screens. And his skills and functionality there as a slip guy and his connective playmaking as a short roller. There's just a really good fit here, in my opinion, offensively between Peterson and Sabonis. It maybe doesn't have the defensive congruency that you would love to see with a Caleb Wilson and Sabonis pairing. But I do think for Sacramento, the hype for Darryn Peterson would be very real. I think this guy's electric shot making would really have Kings fans excited. And I do think he still is very likely going to be a top 3 pick in this draft this year, despite his year being a little lackluster for the standards we had for Peterson coming into the draft this season. Pick number 4, the Chicago Bulls. Here, once again, last mock draft, they were in this exact same scenario with the exact same player on the board. So you can guess, 4th overall, I have the Chicago Bulls selecting forward Caleb Wilson out of UNC. And one of the best transition play finishers in the entire draft, shot nearly 80% in transition this season, which was absurdly effective and efficient. And it's not surprising if you look at his skill set, his athletic frame, and the functionality of those tools on the basketball court. This guy's got absurd hand-eye coordination. He's one of the bounciest athletes that we've had in recent years. He's going to step into the NBA and be one of the 10 best athletes immediately. And I think that is going to do wonders around a guy like Josh Giddey, who's such a high-leverage passer. Obviously, under Billy Donovan, they've had a huge stylistic change in the last couple of years from being a kind of middle-of-the-pace team to one of the fastest-paced teams in the entire NBA. And I think Wilson would be a benefactor of that, alongside not only Josh Giddey, but alongside a grab-and-go forward like Matas Buzelis, for example. Obviously, you have Noah Senge in the mix as well. So I think not only do you have that stylistic history of the Bulls drafting these big, projectable, long forwards, but also Wilson's fit next to their point guard play is obvious when you look at Giddey plus Wilson as a combo. And I wanted to point to Caleb Wilson's defensive impact specifically. All of his numbers rank very well on the percentile basis because he utilizes his functional skills to their max potential. He applies himself on the defensive glass and the offensive glass. He's one of the best rebounding forwards we've had in recent draft history. He also gets active as a shot blocker and has some really impressive steals this year. I had an overall full video breakdown on Caleb Wilson, and the maximization of his wingspan and length and his coordination and everything just looks really good on film. Even when the technique stuff isn't quite right yet, he makes up for it a lot of the ways. And I think with good coaching and over time, if he develops and immediately starts to pick up on some of his deficiencies in terms of positioning and everything, all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who goes from, hey, this guy's making a lot of big plays to this guy's making every single play. And he's going to be an awesome, awesome player as a two-way chess piece for a guy like Billy Donovan. The Bulls badly need front court play as well, so not only positionally does this fit what they're looking for and need, but he's a heck of a talent, and getting a player like this 4th overall is extremely, extremely, extremely rare, which is what makes the 2026 NBA draft class so freaking special. Moving on to pick number 5, the Brooklyn Nets here now at this spot. Kind of a tricky spot for them. Honestly, I would love for this team to get a top 4 pick because I think positionally with what they drafted last year, they could really badly use someone like a Dybantsa, a Boozer, or a Caleb Wilson. And I really do think Darryn Peterson would be a brilliant fit in Jordi Fernandez's style of offense. I think the kinds of shots that they generate would fit DP extremely well, both on and off the basketball. But with those 4 guys off the board, we obviously have to go a different way. 5th overall, I landed on guard Kingston Flemings out of Houston for the Brooklyn Nets. And Flemings is a really interesting story this year because Houston's actually been significantly worse defensively with him on the court than with him off. Now, I think there's a lot at play there. It's not just Kingston Flemings is a negative defender, but he's obviously a little bit skinny. He's a little slight. I do think the defensive impact is going to take a bit of time for him to fully maximize who he is defensively in the NBA, which for Brooklyn, by the way, is fine because they're content with losing right now. They're obviously focused on a multi-year rebuild that's going to take many, many years to fully play out and everything. So it's not like they're expecting Flemings to step in right away and completely change the culture of this franchise, but he will be a nice stepping stone for them. And if you look at his shot diet, I do have concerns. The overall three-point volume is just very low. 106 total three-point attempts this season. It's just not enough to feel super great about his offensive process, but the efficiency and effectiveness for him all over the court gives you excitement about what the shot-making talent will look like as you kind of rein in where his shots are coming from. Now, he did take 129 long two-pointers this year, and he shot 107 floater range shots. Now, he shot both of those shots relatively efficiently compared to his college peers, But in the NBA, those windows are going to get a little bit smaller, and 42.6% on mid-range shots is not good enough to justify that high of volume either. Now, the nice thing is with his handle, his ability to get to where he wants on the court, I think for Jordi Fernandez and the Nets offense, he's going to be able to set up a lot of the other guys. Brooklyn already has a lot of three-point shooting. You look at Michael Porter Jr., who's having a career year with Brooklyn, unsurprisingly. You also look at Yegor Dioman, who landed in a perfect situation for him where everyone was projecting him pre-draft as like an on-ball point guard, and I said, hey, this guy's probably going to return best value being off the ball as kind of a wing. That's what we've seen so far. I think Kingston Flemings can be additive to both MPJ and to Yegor Dioman going forward as well. And then obviously with the center room, Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe, I think there's a solid fit here structurally between Flemings and those two guys. So there's definitely some value. Like Flemings' ability to score from all over the court does make him a threat out of pick and roll and off of isolation. So even though the volume's not exactly where I'd want it to be, it still does breed itself to good basketball going into the NBA early in his career. So I'm excited about Kingston Flemings, his possible fit here in Brooklyn. And while it's not the best case scenario for the Nets moving down to number 5 in this mock draft, it's still a good outcome for them nonetheless because Flemings can definitely play in the league. Pick number 6, the Utah Jazz here now. I always love talking about Utah. Obviously, this pick is top 8 protected in a trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder from many moons ago. But Utah, I mean, this team is starting to put stuff together. I'm assuming they're going to be able to retain Walker Kessler this offseason through his restricted free agency. You have Jaren Jackson Jr. That was the big, fun surprise trade of the trade deadline. This team's going to be big. They're going to be long. They're going to be tall. And let's get a guard who can make things run in that kind of system with guard Keaton Wagler out of Illinois. He is accustomed to playing next to size. You think about Mirkovic, you think about the Ivasic brothers. Like, you've got a lot of size there in Illinois. And Keaton Wagler's been the little engine that's made it all run for them. And I shouldn't even say little. He's got solid positional size. Now, it doesn't necessarily show up that way in the film when it comes to him as a finisher. He has basically 0 dunks on the year. But he's very active in a lot of other ways. He secures a lot of long rebounds. One of the benefits with how Illinois plays, they are a little liable to giving up transition offense, but it's because they crash the offensive glass extremely hard, and Wagler's been able to chase down a lot of long rebounds. And I think his rebounding value is actually really important for Utah because Darryn, despite how great of a player he is individually, does not rebound the ball very well for his position. Obviously, the Jazz are going to be very tall and long, so you're hoping your rebounding is going to be quite good anyway. But Wagler is definitely going to be an additive piece to that kind of equation for Will Hardy, which I think is huge. And then the self-creation tools are just great. If you look at his overall scoring this year, only 11.8% of his 2-point makes this year have been assisted, and just 47.1% of his 3-point makes this year have been assisted, pointing to some of the highest self-creation volume, not only in this draft class, but across all of college basketball at the Division I level. And he's doing it on a winning team, a team that has gone so far this year and looks like a real threat to possibly win the national championship with their best player being an under-recruited 3-star freshman. It's absurd. Keaton Wagler's been one of the big ascensions in this entire draft class, and it's extremely exciting because he's had awesome moments. You think back to his 46-point game earlier this season. You think to the Elite Eight, his unbelievable ankle breaker against Sage. That was an insane highlight. But there's just so many things that he does well with the ball in his hands. It doesn't feel like he's ever rushed or forcing anything. But he's constantly been that reliable go-to guy. Whether it's a game where he has 12 points or a game where he has 46 points, you can trust that the process is going to be good with the ball in his hands. Now, for Will Hardy's offense, the fact that he's such a self-creator is a little complicated because there's so much off-ball movement. But I think with Wagler, you're looking at a guy who's not only going to be able to set other guys up in that kind of system, but it also kind of does flatten out your offense a little bit in a way where, yeah, it's great to have all of this movement and get guys hit on the move and everything, but having a guy that can consistently win out of isolation and win out of pick and roll consistently, it's a huge, huge addition to an NBA offense. And I think Wagler's going to be a really nice player to pick up here for Utah, 6th overall. Which now brings us to the Dallas Mavericks at pick number 7. Of course, in my last mock draft, they moved all the way up to pick number 1, which raised the eyebrows of many with the conspiracy theories down in the comment section below. But 7th overall here in this mock draft, I have the Mavs selecting guard Darius Acuff Jr. out of Arkansas. The SEC Player of the Year, was brilliant all season long for the Hogs. Now, they did come up short in the NCAA tournament to the standards that they were obviously hoping to achieve in their loss to Arizona. But Acuff Jr., I think, had such a great season for himself that it's very hard to disqualify who he's been as a player. His analytics look incredible across the offensive spectrum. His ability to shoot the basketball was elite. Shot over 44% on three-pointers this year, and a lot of them came in huge moments for Arkansas, whether it was close games in the SEC tournament or big moments in the NCAA tournament at the round of 64, round of 32, Sweet 16. I mean, Acuff just stepped up big every single time that they really needed him, and he drew a lot of gap help and saw a lot of what I believe will be kind of similar defensive concepts to what he's going to face in the NBA when teams put help on him. Is he willing to get off the ball? And not only is the answer yes, it's a resounding yes. Super high assist rate, over 32% this year. Protects the basketball as well. For someone who was really the crux of the Arkansas offense, the engine that made everything go, whether it was his transition influence, which I tweeted about a few days ago. He really dictates a lot of pace and transition opportunity for Arkansas. Did a great job throwing hit-ahead passes, whether it's to Billy Richmond or Trevin Brazile, or finding a guy like Malik Ewan or Nick Pringle on transition opportunities, throwing lobs. He's got a wide variety of passes that he can throw, specifically operating with the pocket. Creates a lot of rim assists when it comes to beating his man downhill off of isolation and then forcing that low man help to step over so that he can hit the big and the dunker spot. All of that stuff's really good, and Arkansas probably didn't have the right cast of players around him, if we're being completely honest. Now, they did have a lot of size and some defensive acumen, which is great, but they didn't have a lot of super reliable three-point shooting outside of Malik Thomas. You think about when DJ Wagner came into the game. Not a huge three-point volume weapon off of Acuff, and that was part of the reasons for Acuff and the Arkansas Razorback struggles to begin the year, even before Malik Thomas took over that starting spot in the backcourt next to Acuff Jr. And you also look at Billy Richmond, cannot shoot the three ball really at all. A lot of gap help off of him. And then you look at Trevin Brazile, even though he shot the ball decently well this year for his standards, he's not labeled on the scouting report as a capital S shooter. And obviously the bigs for Arkansas were not floor stretchers either. So Acuff was really awesome and dictated a lot of what Arkansas did. And he was doing that in an environment where there wasn't a ton of shooting talent around him either. And I think with the way Calipari's teams typically play, Acuff did lift the floor of that team pretty drastically. And Dallas is kind of an interesting comp to Arkansas because they don't have the best shooting talent in the world. Now, they do have Klay Thompson, obviously, but they have a lot of athletic talent. They have a lot of size, and it feels kind of like Arkansas in the NBA, where they have a lot of defensive infrastructure they're going to be able to surround Darius Acuff Jr. with, and Acuff might be able to be the guy that wins off the bounce consistently for them, opens up frameworks of their offense. And you have Kyrie Irving, you have Cooper Flagg. We'll see if Kyrie stays long-term in Dallas. I think that would be the plan, or should be the plan at least. But Acuff Jr. not only is in a great spot where he can learn from Kyrie and kind of take things in probably as an off-the-bench guard to start his career, but he also has the types of pieces around him where we've seen him be very successful in college. And he's got better talent around him when it comes to the defensive side. I just think, again, Dallas, you're leveling up pretty much everything that Arkansas was. And then Cooper Flagg is still the headliner. So now it's not Acuff's the top of the scouting report. He's the number 2 or number 3 guy offensively. It allows him to play a little bit more into his transition pacing. It allows him to be a little bit more of that kind of table setter, which we've seen him succeed at, while his off-the-dribble shot making and rim volume is still going to be decently effective as well, with other pieces there around him in Dallas. Pick number 8, the Atlanta Hawks here now. This pick from New Orleans. And 8th overall, I have the Hawks here selecting guard Mikel Brown Jr. out of Louisville. I went back and forth here. There was a few different players I really liked for the Hawks at number 8. Remember, they have 2 first-round picks in the 2026 NBA draft. So they've got some optionality for sure. But 8th overall, I went with Mikel Brown Jr. because he can really bomb it from deep, and I think the three-point volume is going to be super instrumental for them. Now, the efficiency wasn't elite this year, Just shot 34.9% on above the break threes and shot actually sub 30% on very low volume of corner 3-point looks this year. But these are the kinds of shots that you're expecting him to take in the NBA, where you're running him out of high pick and roll, transition opportunity, and he's going to catch and shoot above the break and then create for others from there. Toward the end of the year, he started to get healthy. His efficiency's all ticked up. We started to see the player we saw more so in the summer playing in the FIBA scene, and that's exactly who we were expecting Mikel Brown Jr. to be for Louisville. Now, unfortunately, he did miss the NCAA tournament. I think the big bugaboo with him, once again, is going to be that rim volume and just the paint volume in general. Doesn't get consistent paint touches, and he maybe doesn't have the handle that Keaton Wagler has when it comes to self-creation. Now, Mikel Brown Jr., he's got the range, he's got the shot-making talent for sure, and he's still going to have that gravity to stretch defenders out, but he doesn't have that quite electric change of pace, like get to your spot consistently. He doesn't have that left to right size up crossover that Keaton Wagler has. So I still think there's some work to be done here for Mikel Brown Jr., but the priors for him are better than what they are for Keaton Wagler. So if you kind of want to look at the college season and say, hey, this is a small 25 to 35 game sample size, maybe we shouldn't invest everything into just that small sample size and look at the overall picture. And Mikel Brown Jr.'s overall picture is still very good. And for Atlanta, it makes sense putting him as a pairing next to Jalen Johnson because he is more active defensively. He's got solid positional size, and he's definitely a better defender than Trae Young was, which is why Atlanta could maybe feel justified in their overall collection of decisions, especially in the middle of a pretty decent win streak. Pick number 9, the Memphis Grizzlies here now. At this spot, Memphis is obviously such an interesting team. They traded away Jaren Jackson Jr. They traded away Desmond Bane last summer. They're in a really great spot to kind of rebuild their team from scratch, whether it's with Ja Morant or not in the picture. But 9th overall, I have Memphis here selecting guard Brayden Burries out of Arizona. This is a player that I can tell you NBA scouts love. Every time I've talked with an NBA scout, they have been glowing about Brayden Burries. This is a guy who, in mocks about a month and a half ago, I was projected more in the mid-teens, anywhere from 13 to 16-ish. And now it feels like a lock to me that he will be a surefire top 10 pick in the 2026 NBA draft. Memphis found a similar riser last year, maybe even a crazier riser in Cedric Coward, who really wasn't on the first round radar much because he was missing so much time, and then ended up being such a high draft pick at number 11. And now Memphis, here with pick number 9, they could look at Brayden Burries and say, this is the type of player that we want on our roster. Someone who can shoot the ball, drive it, defend up and down the lineup a little bit. He's very functionally strong, and he rebounds in a crowd as well. So I do think his measurements are actually going to come out a little surprisingly negative for what people are expecting. I don't think he's going to measure in as tall as a lot of people are anticipating. I know the comparisons have been to Derek White. I do think he's just a pretty significant amount shorter than Derek White, but he's been extremely productive. He's been arguably the best player on the Arizona Wildcats this year, which in my opinion is the best team in all of college basketball right now. His impact on winning is very evident, and the analytics look really good too. Very high steal rate. Now the block rate's not quite as high, which is why I don't love the comparison to Derek White either. Derek White is arguably the best shot blocking guard in NBA history, or at least in the top 3 or 4 of that category. Brayden Burries does not do that even at the college game right now. His block rate's extremely low, but the rebounding numbers are very good. The application of his athleticism is all quite good. He's a solid passer, not a great passer, but a solid one. This is a player who I know people are going to kind of dock him because he's not a true on-ball point guard or a lead guard, but there's so much value in the NBA for players who understand their role, can play within it, and provide value in that role. And I feel like Brayden Burries is going to do a lot of that. And for Memphis, whether they have Ja Morant going forward or not, there's still a lot of questions about, okay, who are the main core tenants of this team? And Brayden Burries is a guy who, to me, just feels like he's going to fit in around whoever you have and play winning basketball. And that's what Memphis should be focused on. It's not about, okay, let's make sure we have players X, Y, and Z as our stars. It's how do we build a winning program, a winning team? And Brayden Burries is going to be a positive step in that direction long-term for Memphis, in my opinion. Pick number 10, the Milwaukee Bucks here. Reminder that this is the swap worst of New Orleans and Milwaukee. So there is a 0% chance that the Bucks have the first overall pick in this year's draft. I just want to make sure that's clear for everybody. But 10th overall is still a great opportunity for them. And in this mock draft, I do have them selecting forward Nate Ament out of Tennessee. a talented player, someone who came in as a top 4 recruit in this very stacked class coming out of high school. And he just hasn't had the season that I think a lot of people would have wanted for him individually. And don't get me wrong, I would not take Nate Ament top 10 in this draft. So I'm not justifying that decision, but I'm projecting what very likely could happen. And if you look at John Horst's recent decisions on draft night, AJ Johnson at number 23, by the way, whew, that was crazy. Nate Ament seems like the type of player that we could see John Horst select in this kind of situation. And I do think there's a lot to blame on Rick Barnes in terms of Nate Ament's overall effectiveness as a freshman college player. Rick Barnes the other day in a press conference said that if he could, he would get rid of the three-point line, and that shows up in Nate Ament's overall volume this season. While he has shot 135 three-pointers, which is decent volume, he's also shot 107 long two-pointers, 82 floater range shots, and just 93 shots at the rim. So from an actual stylistic approach, Nate Ament has not been the type of player that you project to really translate super well to the NBA in any kind of role. And the reason I say any kind of role is the star upside is just so minimal to me. While he has a good frame, gets to the line a decent amount, he shoots so poorly at the rim, sub 54% this season at the rim, that it's hard for me to see Nate Ament blossoming into any kind of star in the NBA. Now, Milwaukee might be putting that kind of pressure on him by drafting him here, depending on the future of Giannis Antetokounmpo there with the Bucks organization. But Nate Ament seems like a player that John Horst could go for. There is some size, there is some talent here. I do think if you can kind of reconstruct his shot diet a little bit and you see some meaningful shooting development from him and a real stabilization in his consistency, then all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who maybe could really warrant lottery level consideration. At this point, he hasn't shown that to me, and I don't believe that he's warranted that kind of decision in this year's draft class, especially with how strong it is. But I could still see a team pulling the trigger on him in this range, and Nate Ament goes 10th overall in this mock draft. Pick number 11, the Golden State Warriors here now, who of course have been on a slide since losing not one, but 2, 3, 4, many guys to injuries after the trade deadline this year, unfortunately for them. But 11th overall, have the Golden State Warriors here selecting center Hannes Steinbach out of Washington. And some of the knocks on him are a little bit that he's a tweener. And I was thinking, okay, well, what's the best maximization of a guy like Hannes Steinbach? And I was thinking, okay, well, you want a team that obviously is going to be able to space off of him. Having the greatest shooter to ever play the sport's definitely going to be a great start. But then you look at his value and what he provides, and it really stems from his rebounding. Ranks in the 98th percentile in offensive rebound rate this year, ranks in the 99th percentile in defensive rebound rate. This guy's been a walking double-double machine for the University of Washington all season long. Dominated Big Ten play individually. Now, Washington didn't have that team success as much. I don't think their roster was really set up in a way that was going to be super conducive to winning. But Steinbach was a real positive for them. They won their minutes pretty consistently with him on the court. He showcased a little bit of three-point volume. And for a tweener to fit somewhere, Draymond Green's kind of like the ultimate glue guy for a tweener, in my opinion, where Steinbach, he's going to provide his value on the glass. He's going to shoot a little bit. You can feed him in the low post and get into some of Steve Kerr's post-split offense, which I think is really good. The passing's not elite. In fact, it's not anywhere close to elite, but I do think with the right kind of coaching and especially Kerr's tutelage there, you're going to be able to run some stuff for him in those regards. And you're also looking at Steinbach being a guy who could maybe coexist next to Kristaps Porzingis. So it's not just, hey, we have a Steinbach-Draymond combination that you could roll out there that's probably good enough to defend and rebound, and you have some versatility there. But you also have a bigger component of that with Porzingis at the 5, Steinbach as your 4, and you have enough athleticism, enough size, enough rebounding, enough shot blocking to make that kind of consistency work, especially with the shooting on the floor. You think about Jimmy Butler. Obviously, Podziemski does a lot of nice little things for Golden State. This team's going to be, I think, pretty good next year if they don't age horrendously. Obviously, you're banking on a lot of at least non-regression at this point for a majority of Golden State's players going forward, and you're obviously praying for health as well. But Steinbach could be definitely additive for them for a team that really badly needs more size in their roster as well. Pick number 12. Portland Trailblazers here. Interesting spot. A reminder that this pick is lottery protected out to Chicago if Portland does make the playoffs, which could be a real possibility. But 12th overall, I have them selecting guard Labaron Philon out of Alabama. One of the best players in college basketball this past season, scaled up extremely effectively in the absence of Mark Sears, and went from being this kind of off the ball advantage attacker, get downhill, find spots, kick out from there. He went from that kind of player to I'm your offense type of guy for Nate Oates, and he did so much of the heavy lifting for Alabama. And while the Crimson Tide have had elite offenses historically, I do think that their overall conglomeration of roster talent and also the style of play for Nate Oates doesn't maximize big men extremely well. And I think there was a lot of drives this year where Labaron Philon got to where he wanted, but the help came over and it kind of just led to dead possessions. And I don't think that will be as problematic for him in the NBA with better spacing, better big man talent around him, more lob threats, and just more consistency there from his 4s and 5s. And I think Portland's a great landing spot because you have Donovan Clingan, someone who can go DHO with Philon or who can step out and shoot it a little bit and has been so productive for the Blazers this season. He's going to be one of the main core tenets of their franchise going forward. Labaron Philon can be really additive for a roster because he's got such dynamic on-ball skills. His ability to handle the basketball, he's got that perfect combination of burst and misdirection and decisiveness. And I think decisiveness is kind of the key here. It's not just that he's got the ball in the string and can attack off the dribble. It's he knows where he wants to get and why he wants to get there. And it shows up in all of his numbers this year. Absurd 3-point development for him this season. Again, the question is the sample size. How much can we rely on that? And then also, from an eye test perspective, how much of that is a rhythm thing for him, where he didn't shoot it very well playing alongside Mark Sears? Is he more of an off-the-dribble rhythm type of shooter where he needs to have the ball in his hands to be a comfortable, consistent shooter? And we've seen that for a variety of other prospects historically. Not everybody scales into an effective catch-and-shoot guy. So if you're making this investment in Labaron Philon, you're probably going to want to put him on the ball. Now, I do think you can justify that decision, especially for the Blazers, who are probably looking for more guard play. And the style of play that they've had this year in terms of drive, kick, create for others out of that, if they get a little bit more shooting talent on this roster, Philon can be a perfect addition into the way that they play. And then with his own shooting development, his ability to create off the bounce, especially his step back's a real weapon because opposing teams and players have to really respect his drive so much. He's able to get to that step back basically whenever he wants it. Nearly a 41% free throw attempt rate this year too. Just a great season for Philon. As you can tell, I'm kind of glowing about the type of year that he had because he was just so good for the Crimson Tide. And it's really easy to justify a lottery selection for him because I think he has a really safe floor. The very worst case scenario, he kind of scales back down to who he was a year ago, where he was still drawing a lot of first round looks as this combo guard who could create a little bit but could also defend, had a really high steal rate. And while his offensive usage scaled up this year and his defensive metrics scaled down a little bit, I do think kind of somewhere in that middle is where you're going to see the reality of who Labaron Philon will be in the NBA. Pick number 13, the Miami Heat here now. After Bam Adebayo scored 83 points, they've been on maybe a little bit of a tiny skid, and they now find themselves kind of on the outside looking in for the playoff mix. Obviously, everything's so bunched up in the Eastern Conference right now. But 13th overall, I have the Miami Heat here selecting forward Yaxel Lendeborg out of Michigan. Flat out one of the best players in all of college basketball this season. Now, he will be 23 years old on the night of the NBA draft. So you're looking at an older prospect, someone that you should be expecting to be dominating college basketball right now, but that's exactly what he's doing, and we've seen some real meaningful progression for him as well, playing as more so a small forward and then sometimes at the 4 for Michigan this year. His true shooting percentage is just absurd. And a reminder, this guy scaled up from UAB last year, playing for a mid-major program, transferring up to a powerhouse program in Michigan, playing for Dusty May, and it's been nothing short of excellent. He's been arguably one of the best players in all of college basketball. His advanced numbers show that. You see the RAP M right now. But then you're also looking at the scaling up of three-point volume. His three-point attempt rate is way up from where it was a year ago at UAB. His three-point percentage has scaled up very well as well. Getting questions about the sample size on that and everything, but very effective. His usage scaled down a little bit, but his impact in all of the other areas, rebounding, shot blocking, steals, he just makes a lot of winning plays, whether it's crunch time buckets or big time deflections, steals, blocks, rebounding in traffic. Like this guy just screams Miami Heat to me. Like he looks like a Miami Heat player. He feels like a Miami Heat player. His conditioning's great. All of the stuff that you're looking for in a mainstay player for Miami next to Bam Adebayo. I feel like Yaxel Lendeborg is that kind of player. So really fun fit here. I love him for the Heat at 13. Pick number 14, the Charlotte Hornets, now on the clock. Obviously, a great season that they've been having, especially as of late. Knipple has been a dream fit in Charles Lee's offense. I really like Charles Lee as a head coach. I talked about that quite a bit last year on how he's been able to build somewhat of a competitive defense. And then the offense just looks miles better with him. He's been able to rein in LaMelo Ball and really turn LaMelo Ball into a super plus value player. And that's a credit to LaMelo's talent as well. He's gotten a lot of contributions from Moussa Diabate, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Brandon Miller's been obviously productive this year too, Miles Bridges. So the Hornets are in a pretty good spot. They do have some expiring contracts in their front court over the next couple of years, so that's what we're going to look to address in this mock draft primarily. 14th overall, I have the Charlotte Hornets selecting forward Thomas Haugh out of Florida. Now, my big board shows I wouldn't justify this pick myself, but I would understand at least the theory behind it, where Thomas Haugh is this big, long forward who can scale down, playing the three, defend threes, and then also maybe play a little bit bigger at times, defend fours. Now, I do have some real concerns about his overall shot diet, his efficiency as a scorer, especially in the half court. But in Charlotte, you're thinking a lot of pace. You're thinking, okay, how can we create here? And you have a lot of size already with LaMelo. Khan's extremely strong and has decent positional size for himself. Miller's obviously a good, long, big athlete. And then they have great athleticism in the front court as well. So how can kind of fit into the overall picture here, fill a lot of gaps for them, both offensively and defensively. Now, I did need to call out his field goal percentage in the half court. While he's an elite transition finisher, 73.4% on field goal attempts in transition this year for Florida, his offensive output in the half court was quite poor. Shot sub 38% from the field. And I think a lot of that is a testament to how big Florida it was with Condon and Chinyalu and Haugh all starting together and playing horn so much. Like, your rim numbers are going to be a little bit subpar in terms of volume and effectiveness. You're going to be a little bit more reliant on touch. And for Haugh, we also saw a big three-point barrage this year. Shot a lot of three-pointers this season. That's part of why field goal percentage is low. Now, I know some of you probably in your head are thinking, okay, well, why are we even using field goal percentage? True shooting is a better calculator of efficiency, and it is, but field goal percentage is still important because what this essentially means, 62.2% of the time that Haugh shot the ball in the half court this year for Florida, the other team had a chance at rebounding it. Now, the Gators, who are so big, long, and great at rebounding with Chinyalu especially, were able to snag a lot of those misses, and that's why Florida was still such a great team. But that might not be the case in the NBA. Now, with Moussa Diabate, it still could be, which is why I thought this fit was still pretty good and interesting to me, even though I'm not the highest believer in Thomas Haugh myself, especially given his age and some of the concerns I do have. But Moussa Diabate rebounds everything, and I feel like Charlotte could kind of recreate some of what we've seen from Florida, but they have better three-point volume. They have way better guard play than the Florida Gators did. So this might be a best case scenario for Thomas Haugh when it's all said and done. Pick number 15, the Oklahoma City Thunder here now on the clock. This is the most favorable of Oklahoma City, Houston, and the Los Angeles Clippers. And with this pick, I have the Thunder selecting center Jayden Quaintance from Kentucky. Now, really didn't get much volume this year from Jayden Quaintance. Played in 4 games only for the Kentucky Wildcats. Unfortunately for Kentucky's NIL usage, that just did not pay off for them after his torn ACL, which was a questionable investment at the time anyway, because you knew he was dealing with such a catastrophic injury and one that was going to take time to come back from. But we've seen in the past Oklahoma City be willing to take stabs on guys who have major injuries. They were very patient with Nikola Topic when they drafted him coming off a torn ACL. And I feel like we might be in the same spot where Sam Presti looks at this situation and says, if Jayden Quaintance was healthy, he would have been a top 10 pick in this year's draft. And that is very arguably obvious as well, because if you look at his impact, this is his numbers in his lone season with Arizona State as a 17-year-old who reclassified up. He was one of the most productive players in the entire college basketball scene a year ago as a 17-year-old. His defensive impact was through the roof. Arizona State was terrible with him off the court and unbelievably good with him on the floor. 102.5 defensive rating a year ago. The Sun Devils, their steal rate went way up. Their block rate went incredulously up from 9% all the way up to 14.7% with Quaintance on. This guy's awesome. He's super impactful defensively. This guy fits a lot of the boxes that OKC is looking to add into their defense, where they want to be aggressive, they want to be physical, they want to be long, they want to be able to challenge the ball, deflect the basketball, block shots, get steals, get runouts, and go. Quaintance has all of that impact and more. And then offensively, he can still provide some vertical spacing for them. There's questions about Isaiah Hartenstein. Are they going to be able to retain him long term as some of their bigger salaries start to add up with Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren's extensions about to kick in? So getting meaningful, good center play on rookie contracts like they did with Thomas Sorber last year and like they might do with Jayden Quaintance this year would be really tremendous for them. A Quaintance and Holmgren pairing with Sorber off the bench would be just ridiculous, by the way. Basically stock machines, those three guys all put together is just absurd. This has Sam Presti written all over it. Quaintance at 15 would be an awesome pick, and it would have every team that picked in the lottery questioning, did we screw up by not taking Jayden Quaintance ourselves? Pick number 16, Memphis Grizzlies back on the clock once again. Reminder earlier, I had them go with Brayden Burries, pick number 9. And now at number 16, the best of Suns and Magic, I have them selecting forward Karim Lopez from the New Zealand Breakers. This is another player who just kind of fits the DNA mold of what Memphis has been looking to draft. Skilled players at the forward spot, specifically guys who can dribble, pass, and shoot a little bit. Now, the question mark for Lopez is going to be the reliability of his outside shot. In the NBL, the last couple of years has shot it adequately, but not great. And he doesn't carry a lot of three-point gravity to him, but he's able to knock down some open shots at a decently regular rate. So there's some value there in that regard. But really the biggest question mark and the biggest excitement for Lopez comes from his off the dribble creation skills. He has shown some really high level passing for a forward of his age. And then also defensively, the ability to get after it. If we look at his numbers this year, real increase in his steal numbers, basically doubled his volume of steals from a year ago in very similar minutes, only played about 3 more minutes a game this year for the New Zealand Breakers compared to what he played last season for them. And then we also saw a meaningful uptick in his rebound numbers. We saw a meaningful uptick in his block numbers, even his assist numbers. I talked about his passing. He got way more efficient this year, both as a 3-point shooter and as a 2-point scorer. And the free throw rate's at a decent spot as well, nearly a 40% free throw rate. So some really good stuff for Karim Lopez. Definitely easy to understand some of the skills that he has. The question is going to be the reliability, again, of that outside jump shot. But for Memphis, a team that, again, I think has multi-year rebuilding plans on the horizon for them, they're going to be patient, oversee that development of his outside shot. And they're just getting a player who's a good athlete and a quality contributor in a variety of different skills. Pick 17, back to the Charlotte Hornets already. Remember, they had picked number 14 just a few selections ago. And now 17, the worst of Phoenix, Washington, Orlando, and Memphis. With this selection, I have the Charlotte Hornets taking forward Dailyn Swain from Texas. And this is basically a downsized, downgraded AJ Dybantsa. And that's going to sound a little crazy to some people, but the play style is very comparable. Now, Swain maybe doesn't have that elite collection of gathers that Dybantsa has. He probably doesn't have that vertical pop either, but he was extremely productive this year. He's a little bit older than Dybantsa as well. Remember, he spent a couple of years at Xavier before coming over to Texas with head coach Sean Miller. But Swain's awesome, man. This guy can create off the bounce. He's got a very, very, very good crossover. Kind of the intersection of the analytics department and the eye test fan group, because he does a little bit of everything. Very effective at getting to the rim. I talked about rim volume a lot with AJ Dybantsa. Well, guess what? Dailyn Swain had it too. 176 shots at the rim this year for the Texas Longhorns. He was really the big driver of their success in the NCAA tournament. Both he and Matas Vokatitis together. Unbelievably effective in that floater range, over 51% there on 80 attempts this season. And then growing three-point shooting numbers. Now, he did not shoot it well from the corner. Very small sample size, just 13 corner three-point attempts. But from above the break, on 78 three-pointers, he made 29 of them. Good for 37.2%. That is a big, meaningful development for him compared to where he was at Xavier a year ago. Now, again, this is a sample size question. How much do you want to invest and bank on 78 total three-point attempts above the break? If he misses 2 more of those, the number doesn't look quite as pretty, right? Your percentage drops by 3-4% almost. If he makes 2 more of them, all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who shot over 40% from above the break. So that's where the question really lies, because how much do you want to value those 2 or 3 three-pointers that he could have made or didn't make? But it's extremely hard to judge his production as well, because he was extremely impactful on the glass for them. Got on the defensive glass specifically a ton, but came up with some really big offensive rebounds for them. His assist rate's pretty good as well. Did a lot of the creation for Texas without being a super on-ball, high-volume player. And I think his ability to kind of scale down to attacking off the wing, getting paint touches, all of that stuff's going to be very additive for Charles Lee, who does such a nice job already manifesting open three-point looks. And Swain being kind of another big creator for them opens up more optionality for them when LaMelo Ball's out of the game, as another guy who can create off the bounce, operate some high pick and roll. You can do some small-to-small stuff with him and Concanipple. Miller and Swain's an interesting pairing on the wing as well. And again, we've already addressed the wing spot for them going forward, because they do have guys like Josh Green, Grant Williams becoming expiring contracts in the not-so-distant future. But Swain specifically, I think the upside's extremely high here for a slightly older prospect. The film's really good, the eye test is awesome on him, and the analytics look really good as well. This is a player who might return real lottery value in this draft, and getting him at 17 is quite good for the Charlotte Hornets. Pick number 18, the Oklahoma City Thunder on the clock again. Feels like we're getting a little bit of deja vu here with Charlotte, OKC, back to Charlotte and OKC again. But 18th overall, I've got the Thunder here selecting guard Braylon Mullins out of UConn. Now, the Thunder have already addressed one of their biggest needs that I thought that they had coming into the year, which was more shooting. They went out and traded in a big surprise move for Jared McCain. He's been awesome for them since that addition. But the more the merrier, right? I love shot makers and I love shooting and what it provides for Mark Daigneault's offense, whether it's ghost screening or small-to-small actions if you want to slip out of it. You can obviously get some wide pins and you just have the relocation skills. Braylon Mullins has exhibited a lot of those talents and a lot of that functionality for Dan Hurley this year at UConn. And while Mullins, his actual efficiency as a three-point shooter has kind of come in waves, where the volume's really great, over 156 three-pointers above the break, over 35 three-pointers from the corner attempted this year. The efficiency hasn't quite been there. You're seeing him hover in the low 30s percentage-wise, but the shot making is obvious. Like, you watch him play, the mid-range pull-ups are really, really good. He's got awesome touch in the floater range, shooting over 62% in that range. Now, the volume in those areas isn't great, but again, you're looking at drafting Braylon Mullins as a specialist, and one of the things I like the most about him as a specialist is he still does impact the basketball a bit defensively. Came up with some really huge plays for UConn in some of their NCAA tournament games already, where he gets his hands on the basketball and packs the basketball big time. And then just has some awesome moments for them. And when he does get the shot rolling, he feels like a really additive player that hasn't shown up in the on-off numbers a ton this year for UConn. But again, I think for OKC, you're not looking at a foundational player, a fundamental player for them. You're looking at kind of a specialist to fill a niche small role for them. And in the events that Jared McCain's not ready to go, or Isaiah Joe's out, or if you need to make a roster decision on one of those two guys moving forward, maybe it's, hey, we can't pay Jared McCain on his next contract. It's, oh, well, we have Braylon Mullins on his rookie deal moving forward the next 4 years. So there's definitely some benefits of that, and that's why I went with Mullins here at 18 for OKC. Pick number 19, the San Antonio Spurs. This pick coming from that swap option with Atlanta. The recent Hawks winning streak has moved this pick down a little bit, but there's still some great options on the board for the San Antonio Spurs. 19th overall, I landed on Merez Johnson out of Michigan. This guy's been awesome for the Wolverines this year. Big, strong, physical, burly player who can really impact the ball defensively, especially out on the perimeter. He's got great mobility skills. There's been some comparisons to Isaiah Stewart, and while I think that there are some real similarities between the two players, especially the impact that they're going to have defensively, Merez Johnson's maybe a little bit more of that perimeter-centric version of who Beef Stew is for the Detroit Pistons, which is a very, very, very good NBA player. And I wanted to call on to some of Merez Johnson's advanced analytics defensively to start with. Really high defensive rebound rate, over 19%. Really respectable offensive rebound rate, nearly 13% there. So he rebounds the ball extremely great. Blocks a ton of shots, almost just a little bit over a 5% block rate. Gets a decent number of steals. Again, steals and blocks are not the only way to really gauge defenders. I think Merez does a nice job presenting with physicality and size and activity level, where he's able to blitz out onto ball screens, hedge out there aggressively, cover space and ground and time. all of that stuff is more meaningful to me than just the steals and block percentages. But the steal and block rates are also very indicative of how good of an athlete this guy is, his anticipation skills, and how you can spur some transition opportunities for San Antonio going forward. And I think that really is the big thing. Now, he also got to the free throw line a ton this year. His free throw rate's really good. Usage is in a decent spot. Now, the passing, and this is where I have some concerns about Merez, which is why I'm a little bit lower on him than some others. The kind of ancillary offensive skills aren't great to me. He's dabbled in some three-point shooting, shot it decently well when he has, but it's not like he's an outside perimeter shooter at this point in time. And then also the assist rate is just very, very low relative to the turnover rate. He actually has a negative assist to turnover ratio this year, despite playing with a lot of other talented players like Ademara, Elliot Cardoza, solid college guard, and then also Yaxel Lendeborg, who we talked about earlier in this mock draft. So Michigan's got a lot of talent. They've got 3 first-round caliber picks in this year's draft, and yet Merez Johnson's assist numbers just don't pop off the page at all. And I think there's a lot of truth behind that when you look at the actual game footage as well. Number 20, the Toronto Raptors here. I have been typically mocking Henry Vassar to Toronto in this range, but another big man has actually slid down the board, and I do think this is possible on draft night. Bigs tend to be underdrafted, especially when so many teams like San Antonio, for example, feel like they have their center spot figured out with Victor and Cornette there. So bigs tend to slide a little bit. 20th overall, the Toronto Raptors are going to stop the slide on this guy. Patrick Gungba out of Duke. This guy is awesome. His dad was a college basketball player. He comes from a good college basketball lineage, and you can tell in the way that he plays. He is super smart, cerebral, understands how to use his size and length and physicality. He rises to the moment. If he's playing a big, strong big man, he's going to match that physicality with him. If he's playing a skilled big, he's going to take away space and get up into him and present physicality to a guy who maybe doesn't want to play into that physicality. He just constantly does a lot of the right stuff, and I think we saw how impactful he was when he was out of the lineup for Duke and how badly they missed him. This Duke Blue Devils team is not a super team. Now, they do have a lot of quality players and guys who are going to fit really good roles in the NBA, but they're not just stacked in talent individually. And Gungba's value and impact is so essential for them. And if you look at his advanced numbers this year, it's easy to see why. 93rd percentile in block rate at 6%. Rebounds the ball very adequately too. The biggest callouts for me though are the free throw rate, where he has a near 70% free throw attempt rate, which is awesome. He's a low usage player, but unlike Merez Johnson, who we just talked about with the passing feel a bit, like the passing feel for Gungba is unbelievable. He can operate high lows extremely effectively. This is the type of player that you could play off the top of the key and delay action. You can throw him into the middle of the floor, have him operate out of the nail against zones. And I think there's just so much value in that when you have a big man who can make decisions, flow into dribble handoffs, pass the ball all over the court, hit to the weak side beat the weak side low man, by spraying it over to the opposite side corner. Like, all of that stuff's really good. He plays within himself. He's got very good hands as well. He just consistently catches the basketball with close radius passes coming to him. He just impacts the ball in a lot of ways. Now, I do think he has a tendency to kind of get his feet and hands caught up in guys. He's typically just always around hook and hole calls in college basketball, I feel like. And it shows up in his foul rate. Over 5 personal fouls per 40 minutes. So, again, I talked about that physicality, like the aggression level. He plays physically, which is good, but you can't rely on him being a 30-minute per game player for you in the NBA probably because of that. So you're looking at, okay, is this a 22 to 28 minute per night contributor? And listen, those 22 to 28 minutes are going to be awesome for a team, but that's why a team like Toronto, who already has Jakob Poeltl in the mix, like, this is a landing spot that makes sense, because I think conceptually he fits Darko Rajakovic's offense. He can be a real additive piece to their defense fundamentally alongside Colin Murray-Boyles. And then you don't need him for 35 minutes a night because you have CMB, you have Jakob Poeltl, and Gungba. Like, you're looking at Gungba and CMB kind of being that combination going forward together. But Poeltl right now is kind of your little stopgap as insurance of, hey, Gungba foul trouble tonight. Let's just lean onto Jakob minutes a little bit more, right? Now we'll see if Poeltl's with the Raptors long-term or not. There was a lot of trade rumors about him, but I feel like Gungba is such a great option for them at number 20. You really can't go wrong with this decision for them at this spot in the draft. Pick 21, the 76ers here now. Obviously, they've been an interesting team to watch here down the stretch, dealing with so many injuries. Real risk for them having almost shut down the season. But a couple of big wins has kept them afloat here. Remember, this is the second most favorable of OKC, Houston, and the Clippers pick. They got this for Jared McCain. 21st overall, I have them selecting center Chris Sanac Jr. out of Houston. I think that's going to be a little bit of a questionable pick to people, but I want to rationalize my decision here on Chris Sanac Jr. in this mock draft. Very productive in a lot of other areas. Really high rebound rate this year. A really good block rate. I feel like watching him specifically at Houston, a team that has a very good defensive backbone and infrastructure, the way that Kelvin Sampson coaches, felt like Chris Sanac was really additive to that this season with his activity level and his attention to detail, his hands, and you could just feel his sheer size as well. Pause. But he was awesome this year for Houston because he did so many of the little things for them defensively and on the glass that was really important at closing out possessions and winning some close games and some tight games. And then offensively, like, the talent is very real. And for Philadelphia, I'm kind of picturing a Sanac and Embiid pairing together in the front court that's a little bit more dynamic than anything that they currently have with Drummond or Adembona, who both are just purely backup bigs in the NBA who are going to play when Joel Embiid's out of the game. Whereas Chris Sanac Jr., if you look at his shot diet, like, you can tell there's some real stretch potential here where, hey, maybe you could play two bigs together, Embiid and Sanac, and that maybe takes a little bit of the weight and pressure off of Embiid as just your sole rim protector. Maybe you're able to rest his legs a little bit more, put a little bit less pressure on him defensively with Sanac's presence, which again was very productive this year at Houston. But then offensively, like, you're not jeopardizing your spacing in this kind of context because Sanac shot the ball extremely well for a big man in that mid-range area, almost 38%. Now again, mid-range shots, like, you don't want Sanac shooting 105 mid-range shots every 35 games in his NBA career. You're hoping he doesn't take 3.5 mid-range shots a game. That's just not going to be sustainable for good NBA offense. But can you stretch him out behind that three-point line? Shot almost 35% on above the break threes this year at the college game. Definitely projects well for his future career. Really great touch and finishing skills around the rim. Obviously, that athleticism pays off big time too, where he shot almost 83% at the rack this year and 60% on that floater range. So really some similarities to DeAndre Ayton as a player. Now, it's probably not going to be the excitement that gets everyone super juiced up, but I feel like the motor is going to be less of a concern for Sanac compared to what it's been for DeAndre Ayton, which has been one of the biggest problems. And I think with some real role redefinition and shot diet adjustment, Chris Sanac Jr. could provide pretty solid value here to Philadelphia at number 21. Pick 22, the Detroit Pistons on the clock here now. Obviously, we're hoping for Cade Cunningham to get healthy. Very sad situation with the collapsed lung. Hope he's going to do fine and well, and hopefully he can come back and play some meaningful basketball sooner than later. But even with Cade Cunningham, when he is healthy, the Pistons are so reliant on him creating, and I love this fit that I'm about to mock here. 22nd overall, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting guard Bennett Sturtz out of Iowa. This guy is so freaking good at basketball. He's going to be underdrafted. He's going to be underrated coming into the draft. People are going to assign a ceiling to him and say, oh, he's not the best athlete. His first step's a little limiting. This, that, and the other thing, without understanding the context that he was playing in for Ben McCollum. And while it was very successful for Iowa, it clearly is not a system that benefits individual players and their NBA draft stock. And that's not Ben McCollum's job. Ben McCollum's job is not to get guys drafted. It's to win college basketball games, and they do that. But the style of play is so slow, and it's so reliant on a real maestro and orchestrator of offense. And that's exactly what Bennett Sturtz is. This guy's constantly 2 or 3 steps ahead of the defense. He is extremely smart. And I think if you're looking for a guy to handle the ball when Cade Cunningham's off the floor and maybe alleviate some of the pressure on Cade if you want to get him more mid-post touches, you can have Sturtz kind of be that combo guard with him where Sturtz is effective off the ball, can really shoot it, obviously can dribble and pass it quite well too. And once you get him into a higher pace environment, which Detroit obviously has a lot of great athletes and speed, and they have awesome big man play, which Iowa did not have, then I think Sturtz is really going to pop big time. If you look at his shot diet this year, a ton of above the break 3-point volume, almost 240 attempts above the break this year. And if you watch Iowa play, you know how many of them are grenades at the end of shot clocks, where he catches the ball with 3-4 seconds left on the shot clock and he's got to get a shot up. And he'll work out a get action where he is like a pistol action where he throws the ball to a big and gets it back. Whatever he has to do to create shots, he's been doing it. And he's been making a good enough percentage of them his entire college career that I'm just sold on him at this point. Absurdly efficient at the rim, one of the better passers, very, very, very smart. Very good in the touch ranges as well. Well, again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of volume for him in those areas in the NBA. It shows that this guy's got legit shot-making talent. People are going to say, oh, he's so reliant on the step back. Yes, because in college, he was the top of the scouting report. He was getting blitzed and hedged on every single ball screen. He's the guy, right? Whereas in Detroit, oh, well, guess what? He's probably not the number 1 or number 2 guy on the scouting report, which means he gets to play off of cage gravity a little bit. He gets to catch and shoot a little bit more. He gets to catch and attack closeouts, things that he didn't really get to do much in Iowa. And oh, by the way, they'll have probably way more transition opportunities for him. And guess what? When he was in transition, he looked fantastic for Iowa as well. So he's a really, really great player. He's going to get underdrafted this year, and he's going to return very likely lottery value in this year's draft class. Pick 23. We're back to the Atlanta Hawks here now. Reminder earlier, they went with Mikel Brown Jr. pick number 8, and now at number 23. I absolutely love this selection, and I'm sure most Hawks fans will as well. 23rd overall of the Atlanta Hawks selecting center AJ Mara from Michigan, and there's been a lot of discourse about Mara and the versatility, the functionality. Here's some of the facts. He is arguably the best big man passer in this draft. It's either him or Patrick Gungba. I think Mara has a little bit more creativity and Gungba might have a little bit more functionality as a passer. Gungba doesn't have quite the turnover rate that Mara does either. But Mara is a very, very good passer. You can run certain actions through him, which I think would be very additive for Quinn Snyder in the way that the Hawks play. Very nice there. But really, it's all about the size. Now, he's not a great conditioned athlete. I would be shocked if he's ever playing 28 minutes a game in the NBA. But for the 18 to 24 minutes he's on the court for you, there's going to be significant impact. And what I mean by that is if you look at how opposing teams shot with him on the floor compared to off the floor, they were scared of him at the rim big time. And this isn't going to just be a college trend. We will see this impact in the NBA as well with his size and length and shot blocking. He had unbelievable block rates at UCLA. Mick Cronin just did not like him or didn't understand how to play him. Dusty May has maximized a lot of what AJ Mara can be on the college floor, and it gives us a good sign of who he'll be going into his NBA career because teams shoot way less at the rim when he's on the court per 40 minutes. Their rim percentage decreases drastically, dropping almost 7% in terms of their actual efficiency at the rim. And then the paint attempts also drop drastically. They do not allow a lot of shots at the rim or in the painted area that are effective. Just 37.7% allowed in the painted area this year for AJ Mara with him on the court, 83rd percentile. And then look at the mid-range twos. They give up a ton of mid-range twos, 2nd percentile in allowed mid-range attempts, and that's exactly what you want. That's the whole MO of playing drop coverages. Sure, we'll live with mid-range 2-point attempts. Mara's impact at the rim was so obvious this year. Teams didn't even shoot it very well from the mid-range against Mara's drop either, just 32.4%. So this guy's productive, impactful, fits the style of the NBA, and he's going to be very, very good in the league as well. This is the exact type of center that Atlanta could really use. This is so additive next to a guy like Dyson Daniels. His screen navigation, pairing him with a big, and I mean capital B-I-G, big man in AJ Mara is so, so good for the Atlanta Hawks. Pick 24, the Denver Nuggets here now. Obviously a team that you're looking at filling out key pieces around Nikola Jokic. So with this selection, I have them going with wing Cameron Carr out of Baylor. I really like this kid's game. I think he's got some real fundamental tools that are going to make him good in the NBA. And if we look at his heat map, he's great at the rim. He's great from 3. And this is the exact type of volume you're looking for an NBA contributor as a role player. And I think specifically his athleticism, his functionality and transition, he and Christian Braun would be a very, very good wing combination together because both of them are very good transition play finishers. Cameron Carr can really shoot the basketball, has a lot of volume this year for Scott Drew coming off of off-ball screen actions and being a movement shooter for Baylor. But he's also got that vertical pop where he can jump out of the gym. And I just think this would be a dream come true for Nikola Jokic, having an athlete like this who can also shoot it so respectably. It's basically if Tim Hardaway Jr. got 15 years younger and then could also jump another 8-10 inches in the air. It's a huge fit. We've seen how good Tim Hardaway Jr. has been this year for the Nuggets in kind of a cheap veteran minimum type of contract slot. And I think Cameron Carr here, pick 24, just makes a lot of sense for the Denver Nuggets. Now moving on to the New York Knicks, pick 25 here in this mock draft. I think New York's such an interesting team to talk about because you could look at another big man For them, possibly, you could look at the wings. Obviously, they did a nice job getting Jose Alvarado at the trade deadline. That's been very additive for them. But 25th overall, I have the New York Knicks here selecting guard Isaiah Evans for Duke. And while I said I do like their guards, I still think that they could use another weapon like this, someone who's an elite movement shooter. And the first year of Mike Brown at Sacramento, I mean, Kevin Huerter was really the highlight experience of that entire thing, while Sabonis was the dominant on-ball initiator for them mostly. Kevin Huerter was a lot of what made that offense run, and I think Isaiah Evans, his functionality this year for Duke has been so apparent. When the game gets tight, the going gets tough, John Shire says, hey, Cam Boozer, you got the ball. Isaiah Evans, go screen for him. And the ghost action specifically has been absolutely money for Duke this entire year. And for New York, you can maybe pair that with Karl Anthony Towns. You can utilize that with Jalen Brunson, although Brunson's size might be a little limiting in how you actually effectively feed Isaiah Evans the ball out of those actions. There's still a lot of value between the talent that New York already has on the ball and then a movement shooter, a relocation shooter like Isaiah Evans, who can fit so many different play styles and archetypes. And if you look at his overall effectiveness this year, he has grown drastically as a shooter. Well, you can't see it on the screen right now because my camera's blocking it. He has a 3.8 defensive RAPM, a 4.4 offensive RAPM. He's taken massive strides forward defensively, very effective this season, and then the shooting is just so extreme. 65% three-point attempt rate, shooting over 36% on threes this year. And then in the NCAA tournament, he's showing off a lot more of that three-level scoring, some really nice gathers and finishes at the rim, some meaningful buckets in the mid-range area too, where he's playing through some physicality and contact. Isaiah Evans is about twice or three times the player he was a year ago. He has improved so dramatically defensively and as a play finisher outside of just three-point shooting that he's a night and day different prospect. So 25th overall here. I love him for the New York Knicks. I think the functionality is going to be very good for Mike Brown's offense. And then he's not just this complete nothing on defense like he was projected to be a year ago this time in 2025. Pick 26, the Los Angeles Lakers here now, and I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. In fact, I'm mocking the exact same player to them that I did in my most recent mock draft, because if he's available, this is the guy that the Lakers probably should pick. 26th overall, I have the Los Angeles Lakers selecting center Mo Krivas from Arizona. This guy is dominant defensively. His impact around the rim on the defensive side of the ball is elite. If you watch the way Arizona defends, they funnel a lot of stuff into him, and he just completely shuts down the paint. Now, it's not all about block shots, and this is where I think block rate, again, the analytics don't do it justice on how good some of these players are, so if you get into the actual nitty-gritty on-off numbers, that's where you have a better idea. With him on this year, Arizona's allowing just 16 rim field goal attempts per 40 minutes compared to 19.6 with him off. At the rim, look at the absurd effectiveness here defensively. Down to just 51% at the rim this year. That ranks in the 99th percentile of all individuals in college basketball for their defensive metrics with them on the court. And the paint numbers are great too. While they do allow a decent number of paint attempts, again, with the way that they funnel, teams do not make many of them at all. Under 32% on paint 2-point field goal percentage this year with Krivas on the floor. So their defense is just stellar. And then also, again, they allow the most mid-range shots per 40 minutes with Krivas on the floor. 11.5 per 40 minutes, which is very high volume of mid-range 2-point shots. But guess what? Teams, again, are not very effective in it because Krivas does a really nice job playing up at the level, retreating. He's active around the basketball, but he doesn't jeopardize the rim at all in the entire process, which is why you want to play drop coverage to begin with. Mo Krivas, very effective, very good player, and a guy who, if you get this type of big man next to Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves going forward, you have now your anchor on the defensive end. There are some real offensive limitations. His touch around the rim is not great. He's sub 70% at the rim this season as a finisher himself. Now, part of that also has to deal with the way Arizona plays, right? They have Koa Pete. They have a bunch of other size that, Wale. Like, they don't have this elite spacing that is going to open up the paint for them in a way for a guy like Mo Krivas to succeed. I think his fit next to Luka would probably dramatically increase his rim finishing numbers, but it's not like he's going to be this dominant rim finisher that's ever shooting 80% from the floor or anything. In fact, I think he'll be more in that Jakob Poeltl kind of mix of type of player where his defensive numbers are good, the offensive numbers aren't sexy, but they're enough to get the job done. And I think he would understand his role very well in LA. And this is the type of player that Lakers fans should be praying for on draft night. Now, there is another big I would prefer for them. I would rather have them draft Henry Vassar, because I think Vassar, if you look back at his time at Arizona, had very similar defensive metric numbers, and I think the offensive game is just more polished and better than Mo Krivas. But I could understand a Mo Krivas selection, and I still really, really, really like this pick for the Lakers here at 26. The Celtics at 27, going from one storied franchise to another. And Boston's a fun one, man. This team always drafts so well. Brad Stevens is an absolute genius. 27th overall, I have the Boston Celtics selecting center Henry Vassar out of UNC. Trust me, he was not going to last much longer on my board. Now, I've mocked him as high as 18 in some of my other mock drafts. He does slide a little bit lower. Again, like I said with Gungba, centers tend to fall. Krivas, Gungba, Vassar, these guys should not be available in the 20s. But it's a very real possibility that they will be, because teams just do not value the center spot enough. They would rather swing on upside and talent stabs than taking functionality and good players. And that's why some of the teams that are mediocre stay mediocre for a while, because they would rather take the chance, whether it's a 2% or 6% chance on a guy being a star for them, than just building up a functional unit and then being a piece away at some point in time to being a really darn good team. And Boston takes advantage of that. They did it with Baylor Shireman. They did it last year with Ugo Gonzalez, who has fit in way better than I even expected. Ugo Gonzalez is looking like one of my misses from the 2025 draft a little bit because of his impact. Now, I do think Boston's been the perfect outcome for him, the perfect destination, but you have to credit Brad Stevens for fitting players into the way that Joe Mazzulla coaches, and that's why Henry Vassar makes so much sense. If you watch this guy in delay action this last year for UNC, it's impossible to come away from a game saying, hey, this guy's not a good NBA player in his future, because he's got so much feel for his position. He was a really nice passer, creator for them out of DHO and delay action hub, some high-low operation with Caleb Wilson this year. Oh, by the way, he also shot it incredibly well from three. And with him on the floor, UNC was 20 points per 100 possessions better than their opponent. And with him off the floor this year, they were 10 points per 100 possessions worse than their opponent. A near 30-point net rating differential, which is 99th percentile in all of college basketball this season. He had an awesome offensive rating, absurd defensive rating. Look at the difference here in the defensive rating numbers. With him on the floor, their defense just allowed 101.1 points per 100 possessions, which is very, 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 very good. And with him off the court, UNC's defense was abysmal. 119.4 points per 100 possessions allowed. Now, I think that number does say more about the depth quality that UNC had at center, and less about Vassar individually. But Vassar, his numbers going back to Arizona were really great. This guy's a good NBA big man, period. His impact on offense is very, very high. And I think this is like a dream fit for the Boston Celtics, where you get a big man who can do a lot of different things for you, super functional. This is like a super upgraded Luka Garza, or maybe a downgraded Kristaps Porzingis in a lot of ways. He's not quite as long or tall or have the range of Porzingis, but he's a really quality passer, and he's going to be way better defensively than Luka Garza is. So this is like a really nice middle ground for Boston to get a guy who's going to be a really good contributor for them, a true starting caliber center long term. And while I don't even think they need a starter, because Nemash Kid has been so awesome for them, they also have Nikola Vucevic now. Vassar, younger than Vuce, really solid player. Get another center in the room. The Celtics are going to continue to cook with gas going forward. Pick 28, the Minnesota Timberwolves here now. This pick comes from the Detroit Pistons, part of the Mike Conley, Jaden Ivey trade we saw at the deadline. But 28th overall, Minnesota here selects forward Koa Pete from Arizona. And I'll be completely honest, I do not love this fit, but I think there's a real way to rationalize this here for Tim Connolly. He was the guy who, remember, brought in Aaron Gordon to Denver. I think Koa Pete, who has drawn a lot of Aaron Gordon comparisons, is nowhere near as good as Aaron Gordon, but the physical body type looks similar. Depending on how well he shoots it in workouts, he could definitely sell some scouts and GMs and front office executives on his upside as a shooter. But right now, the offensive process is extremely poor in college basketball. Part of that, again, is the way that Arizona and Tommy Lloyd play. Like, that's just their style of play, is more rim volume, more inside shots, not looking for a ton of threes. But Koa Pete's numbers are not good. Just a 5% three-point attempt rate, which is incredulously low for a forward in 2026. That's just extremely low. Now the assist numbers are okay. 17% assist rate's kind of intriguing. He's had some good moments passing out of the post this year, or functioning as a short roller. And when he is allowed the rim as a long roller, there is some functionality there. And part of the idea here for me with Minnesota, they've really tried to scrape together their front court lineups with Gobert off this season, whether it's pairing Randle and Naz together, which hasn't been super effective, but it's what they've done. Like, this is just another big physical body to throw into the room where Pete next to Gobert probably doesn't function at all, presumably. But in the moments when Gobert's off, you can maybe go to a 3-forward combination with Reed, Randle, and Koa Pete. You rebound a little bit better. You have a little bit more strength, a little bit more size. It slots Naz Reid down to a small forward, which is really positionally what he should be viewed as around the league anyway, in my opinion. Because of his ability to handle, create off the perimeter, play in transition. Like, he's more of a 3 than he is a 4 defensively too, in my opinion. So Koa Pete, who is more of a true power forward, maybe you could fit him and Randle and Naz all together in kind of this interesting hybrid combination of forwards who are all kind of positionally a little weird, but maybe together there's a decent like package that you could work out. Now, again, I don't love Koa Pete as a prospect. I did have him outside the top 30 on my most recent big board, but let's be real about it. He's a productive freshman on the best team in the country. He's going to get drafted in the first round. 28's probably about as low as you actually could see him go on draft night. He'll probably even go higher than this, but it was hard for me to find the exact spot I loved for him in this mock draft. Pick 29. Cleveland here now, who has been on, of course, a roll since acquiring James Harden. Pretty significant win increase for them after landing Harden at the deadline. 29th overall, I've been going with forward Dame Sarr out of Duke. And I think if you look at what Cleveland has, they already have their front court, for the most part, figured out, right? You have, obviously, Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley. We'll see if those two are going to be together long-term or not in this Cleveland front court. But you have the backcourt in Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. And I think one of the things that you're probably missing for this team is just another point of attack defender, another long, good athlete to throw at offensive players. And Dame Sarr has been awesome this season for Duke. If you look at his advanced defensive numbers, with him on the court, Duke allows just 93.8 points per 100 possessions, which is elite. And with him off, they allow 100.3 points per 100 possessions, which, by the way, is still elite, but his impact is very clear. And I wanted to point out specifically, I thought this graphic was really important to include because you see the steal percentage actually goes down with him on the court, and the block rate, while it goes up, doesn't go up a crazy amount, just 1.5%. So why is their defense way better? And this is the issue with analytic scouting and looking at only steal and block percentages and stuff. Like, it doesn't quantify how good defenders truly are. Dame Sarr is awesome at the point of attack. He's very good in screen navigation. He's long, and he makes a lot of winning plays, whether it's rotating over as a low man at the right time and presenting with length and size, forcing a miss, or contesting a mid-range step back, getting through high ball screens, and then being able to contest a pull-up 3. Like, there's a lot of stuff that Dame Sarr does that during the game doesn't go in the stat sheet, but it impacts winning in a massive way. And while I talked about Duke not being a super team, what they have is a lot of awesome role players. Dame Sarr is an awesome role player. Now, we need to see meaningful shooting development. If Dame Sarr went in the second round this year, it would not be shocking to me. But this guy can really guard the basketball, and if you're looking for players who could be additive around guys like Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, around Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, Dame Sarr, who most of his volume is going to be corner three-point attempts and defending the basketball, that's his value in the league. There you go. Boom. Put him in Cleveland next to Harden. They're going to be able to make everything work out there. This is an 18 to 22 minute per game contributor. You put him in, he guards the other team's best player for those 18 to 22 minutes and provides impact and value in that way on a cheap, nice little rookie deal. Pick number 30, the Dallas Mavericks here now. Worst of Oklahoma City, Houston, and the Clippers. They got this in the Anthony Davis trade with the Washington Wizards. And 30th overall here, I have the Dallas Mavericks selecting forward Billy Richmond III from Arkansas. Welcome to the first round mock draft, Billy. Glad to have him in here. Billy Richmond III is very good. Really solid player. Did a lot of really nice stuff this year for Arkansas. Was all SEC defensive team this year for the Razorbacks and provided some really good impact. Now, is he going to be a first round pick? Probably not, but I did feel like Dallas was kind of the one spot that made a lot of sense for him because of his defensive impact. And then also playing off of Darius Acuff Jr., getting another defensive player in here, I thought would be really good for them, and specifically someone who is such a good downhill player He attacks closeouts extremely well. Now, the big question for him is, will he garner big closeouts in the NBA? Probably not, because he's a very hesitant shooter and at times should be looked at as a non-shooter because of how poorly he shoots it currently. But if you're confident in his shooting development and the stroke doesn't look that terrible, I think if you empower this guy and tell him, look, we want you to shoot the basketball, we need you to, and you refine a few of his mechanical errors along the way, you can turn him into a low 30s percentage three-point shooter, which is at least semi-respectable in making open three-point shots, especially from the corner. That's probably where he's going to occupy the most. But the best thing is when you can get him into this rim volume right here, and he does a great job when he does attack those closeouts, getting downhill quickly. He's an awesome transition play finisher. So for Dallas, if you're looking to uptick your play speed with Flag and Acuff and Billy Richmond, you can definitely do so. And then Richmond also flashed a lot of passing talent this year. I've kind of likened him to a mix of Derrick Jones Jr., a little bit of Herb Jones in his game, also a little bit of Luke Mbah-a-Moute. Those three players have all carved out really great NBA careers. Now, Herb Jones would be like the 100th percentile outcome for Billy Richmond. That would be like if he takes meaningful developmental strides as a passer and as a shooter and gets better defensively. I don't think that's the realistic outcome, though. Derrick Jones Jr. is kind of like this is like the 75th percentile outcome for him, where things go really, really well. His shooting development from the corner specifically grows. All of a sudden, you're looking at a guy who's going to be a 7th or 8th man at the very least type of contributor. And Dallas getting that kind of guy at pick 30 is worth the stab here. Really good athlete. Defensive impact is going to be there. Can guard the basketball. And just, I think, really smart off the bounce as well when he picks his spots as a passer decision maker. So Dallas does really, really well in this mock here, getting both Acuff Jr. and Billy Richmond III, two Arkansas Razorbacks. A lot of volatility in those draft picks because Acuff Jr.'s defensive limitations, I'll say, could really hurt Dallas, and then Billy Richmond III, his offensive limitations could actually really hurt Dallas too. So the low-end outcomes here for both of these guys could actually really be a waste of a draft here for Dallas. But if both of them hit in the way that they possibly could, Acuff's on-ball skills translating well, and then Billy Richmond III as kind of a gap filler and point-of-attack defender and closeout attacker, all that stuff, like, if his value provides true in the NBA, like, all of a sudden you've got two awesome contributors here in just one draft, which is awesome for Dallas again. Thank you all so much for watching. Really hope you guys did enjoy the content today. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Also comment NBA Draft Sicko down below if you made it to this part of the mock draft. Thanks all so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.